Today on the ProLife podcast, pro-life states fight back from the Biden administration trying to force abortion drugs through pharmacies. We need to talk about this. Let's get started. Welcome to the ProLife podcast. Thank you for joining today on this Thursday. Before we get started with the Biden administration's shenanigans, let's introduce everybody.
Hi, I am Veronica Arnold-Smither. I work in education.
Emily Cook, our general counsel.
Kim Schwartz, director of media and communication. And you may have noticed that Brent is not with us today. So he'll be back next week. But
Pro-Life Ladies Hour.
Exactly. I think we can more than handle this today, right? Right.
Yes.
So let's get started. Tell me what the FDA is up to and the response from states.
Sure. One of the battlegrounds now in the wake of Dobbs and states being allowed to prohibit abortion and protect unborn children is this issue of over-the-counter abortion-inducing drugs. What does access to abortion-inducing drugs look like? And it's one of the main battlegrounds right now. And so you've got, pharmacies in every different state, and you have different states that have different laws about abortion-inducing drugs. And the FDA, Federal Drug Administration, it's a federal agency, an executive agency that has come out and told pharmacies, it doesn't matter what your state laws are, you can dispense essentially over-the-counter abortion-inducing drugs like RU-486 and such. And states have come out, pro-life states have come out and said, actually, no, you can't, because our legislatures have passed laws that have requirements for how this abortion drug can be accessed by pregnant women. And like here in Texas, in Texas, you have to have a physician. You would have to, it's just, we don't allow that to happen. If it was within one of the medical emergency exceptions that's allowed under Texas's prohibition, you just can't walk into a CVS or Walgreens and get it. It would have to be with a physician. Physician's order requiring an in-person physician.
But that varies state by state. Absolutely. Too. Like if I'm in California, of course, they're going to be like hand delivering the abortion drugs like to my front door with like a Valentine's Day card or something like that. That's
on a silver platter.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Abortion for everyone.
Yeah. So
in Texas, the intention is, of course, to keep it as safe as possible for women, even though we want anyone to be able to have an abortion unless there's an absolute emergency to save the life of the mother. So yeah, like you said, in-person visit. That way they can do an ultrasound to check, is this an ectopic pregnancy or not? Is this drug even appropriate, or do they need to do something else? And gosh, the government is yet again trying to overreach states' authority.
Yeah, and you've seen, the issue of abortion and the legality of abortion in all 50 states, it started off as this juxtaposition, this pool between the federal government and states' ability to regulate what is best for their citizens through their elected representatives. And that's what Roe abrogated. They took that power away from states, and that's what the Dobbs decision last summer gave back to the states. But that dichotomy, that fight is not going to go away. That is a continued battleground going to be a continued battleground in America as we change the culture to reject abortion. We're going to have these legal fights about what is legal, and you're going to have the federal government versus state governments finding different ways to the federal government trying to, especially when you have such a pro-abortion administration, find ways to try to circumvent the state's individual abilities to decide what is appropriate for their citizens. And that's just yet another, this latest action is just the last in a long line of actions that ever since Dobbs came down, and even before in anticipation of Dobbs coming down, that the federal government is trying to step in and provide abortion on demand.
Yeah. And it's not even Congress. That would be a separate issue. The thing that's crazy is that it's Joe Biden himself with the executive branch saying, okay, FDA, this 3-letter agency, this bureaucracy, like you unelected people can be in charge of policy for the entire United States. And that's not how our government is supposed to work. If they wanted to override our state laws, they would have to do that through Congress. These unelected bureaucrats in the federal government and the executive branch, can't override the state laws. And the Supreme Court has affirmed that even as recently as June, of saying that the executive branch can't override state regulations. They can't pass their own regulations. That has to be done through Congress. But Joe Biden, once again, is like, what's the Constitution? Like, never heard of it.
Well, he's been doing this with three-letter agencies for his whole presidency, saying, oh, the FBI can do this, or now the FDA can do this. And it's maddening. And it makes me really passionate about reminding people how the government is actually supposed to work. Because if enough people believe that the FDA has the authority to do this, people might people might hold their hands up and say, oh, well, what a shame. These pro-life states are going to lose now because the FDA is allowed to say anyone can dispense abortion pills. And it's like, if you can convince someone that you have the authority, well, guess what? Now you have the authority.
Yeah. What is that saying? Power is the perception of power?
Yeah.
Or fake it till you make it. I mean, there's so many ways to describe this, and it's just horrible. We need to make sure we're educating people how the government is meant to work so that we can defend it, so that we can defend our own state laws. Because what if a lot of people in Texas said, oh, well, I throw my hands up. Now the FDA says we can, all the states can dispense abortion pills. We have to say, no, it's not true until I don't believe it.
And that's what pro-life states are actually fighting back, right? Like the attorneys general in a bunch of different states have sent a letter and are working to like push back on the FDA, saying like, you have said this. That doesn't override our state law. So we're still going to enforce our state law. So there's kind of this like tug of war between them right now. But I am really confident that the states will win in this fight, because that's what the Supreme Court said in Dobbs, that this is not an issue for the federal government. This is for elected representatives. This is for the states to decide. And obviously, like, that's not the end point that we want to be at. We do want to have protections for all unborn children in every single state. But the fact of they're just trying to like wrestle this away in any way possible back from the states into the hands of the federal government, I think is a big mistake, but they don't really care.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it's important to have strong attorney generals too, who will fight back and against overreach from the federal government, and will stand up and say, actually, this is not happening in our state. My people have, through their elected representatives, have said XYZ, and you're not going to superficially usurp that authority that is actually rests with our state. It's really important.
Yeah. Now, there's another lawsuit going on, though. Like, it's so apparent that the abortion pills are the biggest frontier right now in the abortion battle. We see that through illegal means, but we also see it through different organizations trying to make it legal, like the FDA, the Biden administration. But you mentioned a very interesting lawsuit, new lawsuit. Give us a short synopsis, and then we're going to have to go to break. So
sure. So two new states, the abortion activists in North Carolina and West Virginia are suing the Attorney General, saying we should be able to distribute abortion pills.
Ooh, all right. We're going to talk about that right after the break.
Have a child in high school? Register them for Team Life Camp coming up on March 31st weekend in Kerrville, Texas. They're going to have a blast with canoeing, archery, hiking, and much more, all while learning how to better defend the unborn from the crazy agenda of the left. But hurry, the price increases on March 18th, so grab your tickets now. Every life is sacred. Every life is worthy of protection. Register now at texasrighttolife.com/camp.
Without warning, you or your loved one could end up in the emergency room, where every second counts and your medical wishes matter more than ever. However, if your loved one doesn't have the right medical documents on hand, they may not be able to make decisions for you in a crisis. My Life Angels solves all of this by walking you through step by step in creating these important medical documents and storing them online securely for you and your family to access at any time. The service is only $7 a month, but use the link in our description for 20% off your initial subscription period. Don't let strangers make life and death decisions for you. Get the My Life Angels app today. Welcome back, friends. All right, Veronica, you were telling us about this other lawsuit from pharmacies trying to say we have the right to dispense abortion drugs, and these mean old states are preventing us. So federal government, please help us.
Yeah, so two new lawsuits out of North Carolina and West Virginia. The abortion activists in those states are saying that pharmacies should have the right to distribute abortion pills even though there are current pro-life laws in those states saying you cannot. And their argument is that it's FDA approved, it's been quote unquote safe for a long time, and all these other states do it, so we should have the right to do it too. And so I'm super curious to see how these lawsuits are going to go. I think they're the first of their kind, and I should have seen it coming. I bet our legislative department was like, well, of course we saw it coming, but I was like, oh, wow, this is new territory. So I'm so curious to see what's going to happen next, because now I'm curious, what are the attorneys generals like in those states, North Carolina and West Virginia? I hope that they're strong and they're pro-life, and that they're going to say, we have the right as a state. We've already passed this legislation. We're going to uphold it. And then if the fight gets heated enough, they're going to have to take it to their circuit court and then see what happens. So, you're our general counsel over here. Any thoughts?
I mean, it just goes back to, it's going to be a tug of war between, people. We don't, like you're talking about how government is supposed to work. So what you're seeing is results based, and they outcome based. They're not, the abortion industry wants abortion on demand so badly that they don't care that an executive agency really can't override the state legislature's duly enacted laws. But they're going to try to do that anyway because they want that result.
Yeah.
And
that's backfired before too. That's what I was thinking about whenever you were explaining it a second ago, Veronica, that any procedure or process that you allow for your side, you also allow for the other side. That's why whenever Roe v. Wade was overturned, in part because of the Democrats in 2013, around 2013 in the Senate, nuking the judicial filibuster. And so before then, they had this procedure that, you have to meet a certain threshold of votes, like a very high bar, to pass judicial nominees, to confirm judicial nominees. The Democrats were really ticked off that Republicans were blocking their judicial nominees. So Democrats were like, we're just going to erase the judicial filibuster and we'll ram through any of our nominees. And I remember Republicans warned at that time that will come back and bite them. And sure enough, it did. And so I just recall with this, like, if they're saying, well, the federal government has the authority to allow or disallow abortion pills. Well, you say that now when you have a Democrat president who loves abortion, but wait till you get the next Republican president. Are you saying then that the Republican president has the authority to ban abortion drugs throughout the United States? Because if that is the procedure that you're pursuing for your side, that's the procedure you're pursuing for the other side too.
And that's just tyrannical dictatorship.
Yeah.
There's no republic or democracy in there.
But the other point is the presence of Roe v. Wade for the past 50 years made abortion, because it hamstrung states' abilities to protect unborn children. And so the abortion fight was largely became and was seen as a legal fight. But just all of these things that we've talked about today.
Like in the courts.
Right. Well, but that it's a legal fight, that to deal with abortion, it's got to be fought on the legal front. And that was the focus of the pro-life movement. That was the focus of on the other side of trying to keep abortion legal. But you see these nuances, proper views of government, state sovereignty, separation of powers, all of these things that goes into what abortion access would be in America and individual states. But what we can't forget is that because there's so many nuances to the legal fight, the real battle is hearts.
Yeah.
The real battle is making abortion, education, making abortion, showing it what it is, and convincing people that it's not okay to murder an unborn child. And we cannot be so focused on the legal issues as the answer to the abortion problem and forget that it's really a culture issue.
Yeah.
Right.
And you don't have to, if you're not interested in politics or going to law school or legislation, you can get a group together at your church. You can host a pro-life conference on a Friday, on a Saturday or a Sunday, and invite speakers. A Pregnancy Resource Center, Texas Right to Life. We have phenomenal speakers, but those are ways to reach people. The church is very uneducated. The American church is very uneducated on pro-life issues, and just this guttural reaction that abortion is bad and anti-biblical. And just by doing that in your community, we have seen I mean, it pays dividends. And so that is a way that you don't have to go to the Capitol. You don't have to, be all up on the latest political news to make a difference on the life issue, but there are resources. We are here to help you with those resources to change hearts and minds in your actual community.
True.
We have a request a speaker button on the website somewhere. That maybe be dropped in the comments. That's a thing.
We got you.
We have more news.
Yeah, exactly. And there's this new series too that to stay up to date, you really can just go to our website and we publish articles as much as we can to make sure that you're involved. Because if you have conversations with people, you need to be informed if you're going to actually change hearts and minds. And so one series that I'm really excited about is this new topic on euthanasia that your team has started.
Yes, thank you. As a pro-life community, we cannot forget that the threats to vulnerable human life are against those of us who are ill, who are suffering with a disability or terminal illness. And the same reasons that we believe that abortion takes the lives of innocent human beings, euthanasia does the same. And we cannot put our head in the sand and believe that it's not coming to us, because euthanasia is among us. It is just called different terms to try to convince us and get us more accustomed to it, but it has two different tenets that you can identify if something is euthanasia: taking decision-making power away from the person that it rightfully belongs to, the patient or their surrogate, like a spouse or an adult child. And the second tenet is removing life-affirming healthcare and instead providing care that hastens a person's death. If you've got those two prongs, it doesn't matter what label it is, it's euthanasia.
Yeah.
So one of the most common, increasingly common issues that we are facing are brain death diagnoses. Brain death diagnoses.
I was shocked in this article. What was the stat that said how many people are declared brain dead?
About 42 every day.
Wow.
Is that in Texas?
In America.
United States?
In the United States.
That's shocking.
And that's about in 2016 was the latest stats that could come out for that. So what we have done is we've got a 4-part series, which we've released 3 out of the 4 of what you need to know about brain death. And if that is something that happens that your family or loved one is being faced with. So I encourage you to check out, these are some of the main highlights of it is that brain death equals legal death. And that means that your loved one, even though you see them, breathing, blood pressure, stats, they're warm to the touch. That means that they are considered legally deceased, which people were like, whoa, how is that possible? And the articles just go into what you need to know and how to approach those situations and kind of pulling the veil back. People think that because it's a kind of a clinical diagnosis, that it's as easy as diagnosing whether you broke your leg. It's not. The standards differ from hospital to hospital, from rural area to urban area. It is not practiced as simply as being able to say, yep, that arm is broken, which is a pretty objective clinical diagnosis that you can find out. And then people are even more uneasy with the idea of brain death when they realize that the medical community themselves can't agree. Right. Do we actually, what does brain death mean? Do we have the clinical tools? Okay, so we get a definition. If we can agree on a definition, do we even have the clinical tools to prove that? It starts to get real scary when you realize that people are coming up to your bedside and saying, your father's brain dead, and so we're going to remove life support.
Right. And there's nothing that you can do really at that point.
Exactly. But you think it's this objective black line, and it's not.
So even Jahai McMath, we've talked about several times on this program, who she was diagnosed brain dead in California, and they were going to remove life-sustaining treatment, and then she would actually pass away. But then there was just this huge rally of support around her, and her family was able to transfer her to, I believe, New Jersey or Pennsylvania, New Jersey. And she was not declared brain dead there. She was not declared dead there. And she actually lived for several more years in this brain dead state, but her body was actually showing signs that, yes, she is alive. She's not brain dead in the sense of like biological death, which is what most people think of, like all of your organs are shutting down and like you really are deceased. But brain death, you don't have that same phenomenon.
And you're exactly right. And one of the articles in our series talks about how brain death and biological death are not the same thing. Yeah. By what lay people, what normal people think, it's not. These terms have been recoined and they are just simply not what a normal person would think that they are. And it's want to bring light to that, because these are things that folks are making decisions based off of, and brain injuries are tough.
Yeah.
But that comes to, where are we as a society? Do we, and as a pro-life culture, do we rally around and take care of the most vulnerable among us? Or do we cast them aside because they're no longer useful?
Right. And I mean, gotta be reminded too of how many of these stories people actually recover.
Yeah.
We had a guest on one of the previous episodes.
Jenny Hammond.
Check out. Yeah, Jenny Hammond. She, people were around her saying she was brain dead. She had long-term syndrome and she could actually hear them. And she woke up and they were like, wow, okay. Maybe we were wrong about the brain death situation. And that kind of thing happens all the time. Yeah. So, it is pretty scary to think, well, who has the authority to declare this? And is it against the family's will or not? And we just need to be really careful. So that's something that TXRTL Life is very focused on. Euthanasia battle.
Yeah. So check that out on our website. Really excited for all of the pieces. And next week we will have part 4 on it. So make sure you check our website, TexasRightToLife.com. I believe that is all the time that we have for today. But thank you for joining, for watching. Make sure you share this with your church, your friends, your family. Like, share, subscribe, all the things. And we will see you next week.